Hey guys. This is part 11 of What If Shikamaru was the main character. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 51, Shifting Desert Winds. Within a few days, we made it to the site of the conference an entire day ahead of schedule, with, get this, absolutely no problem whatsoever. As in, not even a single untrained civilian robber. Nothing. Naturally, this meant that none of us slept well that night. This was, after all, Team 7. Given the way our past two high-ranking missions had gone, something was bound to happen to us sooner or later, and yet, nothing did happen. We got them settled in, did our patrols, and came up with nothing. There was a tiny run-in with another shinobi team from Cloud, 2 Chunin and their recently promoted Jonin teammate, but no blows were exchanged. Kakashi-sensei even kept his mouth shut for once and let Naruto do the talking. Naruto politely exchanged a few greetings with their team leader, explained that our team was here for the Fire Daimyo, learned that they were similarly present for the Lightning Daimyo, and left them to their own devices. We might have spied on them a little bit, but it was just regular spying and not, spying, as in malicious, in Death State-sponsored secret stealing infiltration. Shinobi performed standard intelligence sweeps all the time, as part of protocol, kind of like how card sharks and poker players and businessmen were always lying to each other as part of the game without it necessarily meaning backstabbing. It was just how we worked, what we expected of each other. They were definitely doing the same to us. Sure, simply telling each other these basic things would have achieved the same result, but then it would be too easy. Maybe Kumogakure is also hoping to score an alliance with us, Ino mentioned hopefully. That would be great if that happened, I said. But don't bank on it. They were also talking to the Rocknin that were also here. It's part of their foreign policy. They like to keep their options open while being on no side but their own. Naruto sighed ruefully. Isn't that everybody, though? The morning the conference began, we were part of the daimyo's initial escort group into the discussion chamber. This time, it was Naruto, as the mission leader, who occupied the position of honor beside the upper half of the daimyo's right flank. Ino, our resident censor, was taking up the front, and I was on the left side of the procession, in the lower half, closest to Kakashi-sensei, who brought up the rear. We were surrounded by mostly servants, which was fine by me. There was, after all, someone I needed to talk to. We meet again, young man, Butterfly. How nice of you to be here. Congratulations on your new position, by the way, she smiled. Somehow, behind her aged wrinkles, her eyes seemed to carry the mirthful expression of a particularly mischievous 2-year-old. Then again, it wasn't as if Kakashi-sensei was much better. That is very kind of you. But I am only a mere maid. Yes, a mere maid. First in direct service to Lady Orakawa, and now under the daimyo's lead economic advisor, whose rooms she undoubtedly had access to. For cleaning purposes, of course, because who, me? I'm just a cleaning lady. I can't even read. Teehee. And I'm just a genin, I retorted. She laughed. Still, hey, the average age to Chunin is 17. So I've still got a little over 3 years, I told her, mock defensively. Not that age is a problem for you. The butterfly took a swipe at my head. Didn't anyone ever teach you not to mention a lady's age? I suppose they teach different things in ninja villages. Oh, you're a lady now? I thought you were a mere maid, I smirked. Her nose turned up at me, and she sniffed derisively. Insolent. We continued to exchange barbs and information on the road to the land of iron. To my simultaneous glee and horror, Ino and the butterfly had gotten to know each other personally. And oh, did they get along splendidly. Seeing the two of interact was like watching a soap opera. No, not that. It was a great deal more complicated than that. They weren't just two women chatting about insignificant things. The silly gossip that passed between them all had a purpose, on some level. They were sizing each other up. And sometime between the starts and ends of their conversations, Ino had managed to gain the absolute respect of the butterfly in the best possible way. For the woman had deemed her impressive enough to take the time to converse with on a regular basis. But Ino had also been clever about it, for she had not presented herself as a threat, but as an ally. For all of her skill as a negotiator and a gossip mongerer, she would never replace the butterfly's position in the daimyo's court. The reasoning was simple enough. From the start, she had made it clear that their spheres of influence were completely different, and therefore, no challenge between the two of them would be necessary. Their relationship was an exchange, not a competition. From that bloomed the start of what would one day be the world's most powerful information brokerage circle. That was the success story of the butterfly. As long as she had all the blackmail she had, no one could get rid of her. Otherwise, she'd just go to someone else and spill everything, and she had a lot to spill. But as long as she remained where she was, she could continue to gather her blackmail. It was this exact kind of catch-22 that made her impossible to remove, her cycle of information gathering infeasible to break, like a debtor running from his moneylenders because seeing them would force him to pay back loans he didn't have, and yet the very act of delaying the payments was only spiking up the interest even more and making things even worse. Most importantly, however, was the fact that her relative level of danger was truly low, and she was smart enough not to do anything that would warrant an execution. She had found and settled that comfortable medium between influential but not powerful enough that making her a direct target would be worth the benefit. The 36th C5 Economic Conference. Ino took a quick glance around. Noticeably absent was any sign of the delegation from Wind Country, which was odd because their money-mindful daimyo had been among the first to RSVP. There was a conspicuously empty swath of table where they were supposed to be seated, the unused seats innocently gaping at the rest of the meeting hall. "Oh, whatever," the Earth daimyo yelled. "Let's start without them. It's not like that desert has anything useful to contribute." "Hold on. I think we should give them one more day," an accountant from the Land of Grass said. "They might have been held up by something that wasn't their fault." The Lightning daimyo disagreed. "I'm sick and tired of waiting. Let's get on with it already. This is an economic conference. Time is money, money is time, and time waits for no one, so why should we wait for them? I say if it is not their fault for being late, then it is not ours either, and we should not have to bear the burden of their tardiness. I don't care if they were caught in some freak desert storm. They should have thought to leave earlier if that was the case." That little speech got the whole room to murmur in agreement, and with that, the debate began. Money and power went together like milk and cookies, and alliances were formed and broken at economic conferences just as often as at summit meetings. Wind Country would simply have to deal with whatever unfortunate turn of events sought to hold them up. During the debates, Naruto's clones, disguised as civilian servants, were wreaking havoc. Not in his usual way, which would often involve brightly colored paints and maybe some fire. Instead, he had been armed with something a little more subtle, though no less destructive. The failed experiment Shikamaru had been tossing around the day before they left on this mission turned out to be fantastic in transferring information, especially in the specific case where you did not want to destroy the original copy. The seals, compressed onto thin strips of bookmark-shaped silk, were like tiny radios, but for written words instead of sounds. So instead of stealing, memorizing, or painstakingly taking pictures of the other nation's financial ledgers, they could just slip one of the transcription seals into the inside cover, and within minutes all of that information would be transferred into blank books lying safely in Shikamaru's possession. Someone back home would be happy to have those accounts. It would certainly be useful in calculating the total manpower and money a possible rival could raise in wartime. The information from the ledgers corroborated with Naruto's dog's counts of the shinobi present, as well as the verbal information Ino had extracted from the dignitaries present. Overall, the money each nation was pumping into their military sectors hadn't changed much, though all had seen minor increases when it came to hidden village subsidies. All the while, Kakashi-sensei hung around and did Kakashi-sensei things. "Excuse me, can you hold this?" Of course. Many a poor soul had been left standing in the middle of the hallway with a completely pointless vase in their hands. By the end of the night, they had successfully gathered intel on the smaller nations, as well as the group from Water Country, which had no ninja accompanying them, and Earth Country, which Kakashi-sensei had taken upon himself to do because anything involving IWA was risky. Ino still wasn't sure how asking random people to hold pointless vases was helping Kakashi-sensei spy on the notoriously prickly IWA Nin, but it probably had something to do with distracting any potential witnesses. Perhaps it was a testament to Naruto's ridiculously amazing luck that nothing happened while they were at the conference. No unexpected murders or suspicious accidents. The entire conference was as civil as could be. In comparison to most other international meetings, anyway. Naruto had accidentally ruined more than one of the Sandame's tea parties in his youth. Lightning Country was as strong as ever, as was the Hidden Cloud, both in their military and economic rankings and in their relationships with each other. Unlike with the case of Sand, Konoha would have a much harder time getting any sort of advantage over them. Earth Country, at least, was more tenuous in position, given their landlocked location. In any event, Earth Country and Lightning Country were civil with one another. Earth Country had to be on good terms with Lightning Country, for they were further inland and relied on the ports of Lightning Country to get any sort of imported goods. This had the potential to be dangerous for Konoha, if for some reason Kumobikyu decided that the militaristic IWA was worth turning their backs on the economic might of Konoha and Fire Country 4, it would leave Konoha alone in the world and surrounded by enemies on all sides. This was par for the course, however. Konoha had been dancing around its delicate power balance since forever. As far as anyone was concerned, this was completely normal and fine. The same couldn't be said outside of the conference. But there hadn't been a single peep from Wind Country and Sunigakure. By now, everyone was sure that something was up. No delegates or messengers from there had shown up, not a single merchant or Sannin. It was as if the Wind Daimyo and his family had completely disappeared off the face of the earth. And no one knew why. All communications had suddenly gone silent overnight. It was like that entire area had suddenly disappeared off the map. A couple of late people canceling at the last minute, fine. But when intel suddenly stops pouring in, the peace treaties from the last war forbid the use of spies against other villages. But no one actually followed that rule. It was clear that something was wrong. Where were they? And what were they doing? Was it a coincidence that their activities had dropped off the radar right when all the other daimyo were preoccupied with this important meeting? Perhaps they had been delayed along the road somewhere, and the runner they sent ahead to tell everyone else that they'd be late sprained his ankle, Ino hoped. Things like that happened sometimes. Maybe there was a simple, non-violent explanation for their absence. Ino thought sourly, as if, the land of iron. Naturally, this state of cluelessness regarding Wind Country was unacceptable to any of the hidden villages, and the atmosphere grew more and more tense as time went on. Naruto knew, because they'd caught the Cloud team not so surreptitiously, translation, really obviously, spying on them. That was classic ninja speak for I want a truce talk, but only with someone who knows as little as I do. Team Samui introduced themselves and got straight to the point. Both our villages will want to know what's up with Sunigakure. Likely they'll be sending out a secondary mission anyway. It's more convenient that we, who are already here, retrace the road between iron and wind. And why should we trust you? Naruto asked, because that was always what you were supposed to say every time a foreign team came up to propose a joint mission, and for a good reason. Though the tragedy of Yasuga Pass was supposed to be between Kiri and IWA only, it had had a profound lasting effect on any future thoughts of inter-village cooperation. Samui, the jonin and leader of their team, said, who else is there you would team up with? No one said we had to team up with anyone. A mission like this, either of us could do alone. Naruto didn't like playing the hardliner, but sometimes you had to act tougher than you really were to win at the negotiation table. 99% of the time, misses went low, so you had to aim high. We'll cover for you if either of us run into each other or patrols from sand, Samui tried. If you do the same for us, sure, we can fib for each other, Naruto conceded. But what happens if they offer you freedom or information for ratting us out? Samui snorted. Why would we take that offer? That would just let Sunigakure capture both spy teams, and then they would be under no obligation to let either of us leave. Some information is better than no information. If one of us makes it out, our respective villages could barter for what we do have. Naruto considered this. Cooperation was always welcome, but only if it was genuine. And when it came to ninja, it was always hard to tell. How do we know you won't just take all the good information for yourself and sell us wrong intel? Then we'd be down a team and working off faulty knowledge. That's up to your village leadership. If they can't tell when they're being scammed or lied to, then they deserve whatever's coming to them. That was true enough. Naruto knew that they also had a similar sort of thing in place when it came to intel on Kirigakure. People competed and fought wars over rare resources, but they had to cooperate out of necessity when it came to near non-existent ones. The hidden villages might go to war, as they did every generation, sure. But in general the daimyo and the elemental nations themselves had remained stable for quite some time. Just as the Chunin exams were a very ineffective replacement for war among shinobi, so were the shinobi wars replacements for even greater wars among the nations. The sad truth was, ninja were scapegoats. Their deaths would be just as secretive as their lives. They were there to do the odd jobs like chasing cats and bodyguarding, but they were also there for the purpose of minimizing collateral damage for even higher powers than the Hokage. A potential rebellious minor lord, dispatched before his plans could ever come to fruit, would be missed far less than the thousands of men who would die as a result of his schemes. If nations under the daimyo went to war, cities would be burnt and economies would be destroyed. Armies and legions would pit themselves against one another and leave entire battlefields caked with blood. If shinobi went to war, casualties would be limited to less than a tenth, usually more like 1/20th, of that number. Their definition of a mission was one successful assassination, a quiet death in the night. A battle would be a confrontation between two shinobi. A curb-stomp massacre meant the deaths of a few hundred people. Meanwhile, a minor border scuffle between two nation-states would normally leave at least a few thousand dead, most of them peasant levies without any proper military training, and they called them the crazy, bloodthirsty ones. It was the curse of being too efficient for their own good. Fine, he reluctantly agreed, but no more than that. You go your way, we'll go ours, and neither tries to actively or indirectly sabotage the other. She shrugged, as if she had predicted that this was the best reaction she'd be getting out of them. What the hell is going on? Shikamaru muttered. Beats me, Naruto shrugged. Which is why we're swinging over to Suna instead of going home after this, because gods forbid, they turn into another Karigakure. Sunagakure, this was it. The point of no return. The imbalance of power in Wind Country had finally been rectified. She had made a deal with the devil. Now she would pay her dues, and he will pay his, Temari thought, straightening her robes. The ninja obeyed their lord, the lord supported his ninja, and if the bastard decided to pull any funny business with her, she would remind him just exactly what the word shinobi meant. Mess with me and mine and you will end up like your older brother, she thought furiously. I gave you that title. I can just as easily take it away. Go on. I dare you. The daimyo was dead, long live the daimyo. The new ruler of Wind Country, the late daimyo's younger brother, sat consolidating power in his stead. He was, of course, absolutely devastated that his two young nephews, the beloved children of his late brother, were missing, and if either of them turned up alive then of course he would willingly give up his seat to the boys. Again, his current position was in no way an illegal seizure of power. He only intended to temporarily take charge to keep the country in order while a nationwide search for the vanished 18-year-old and 13-year-old was conducted. Temari snorted to herself. That man's acting skills were truly a work of art, but they wouldn't save him if he decided to turn his back on Sunagakure. She refused to think of the ashes and bones, hidden far out in the desert where no one would find them. She refused to think of the young man her father had once considered a potential match in marriage for her, the young man whose dead body now fertilized the beautiful cactus flowers in the mirror oasis. She refused to think of the boy suffocated in his sleep before he had a chance to fully experience life, the boy who couldn't have been much older than Gaara when she had ordered his death. Gaara, she thought, ignoring the invisible bloodstains on her long, pale fingers. Gaara, I did this for you. The responsibility fell on her shoulders, all of it, but it was all completely worth it if she could get Gaara back. All of it was so she could see him again. She wondered, what would their reunion be like? We've treated you poorly, little brother. Would he be angry? Probably. Would he be violent? Also probably. But she had her apologies and everything all planned out. It would be fine. He would hate them, but if she could stage it somehow to make it look as if Konoha was the one at fault, surely he would hate them more. Besides, it wasn't as if Konoha could have done any better with him. He belongs here, in the desert. At home. With us. There were two sharp raps on her door. With her curt permission to enter, her former teacher stepped into the room. Temari, Baki began. She immediately cut him off with a vicious glare. Baki bowed his head. I apologize. Go Dame Kazakage-sama. Temari smirked and leaned back in her new chair. Much better. She couldn't wait to see Gaara again. Fire Country. Gaara could hardly contain himself. Today he was finally moving out of the ANBU compound and going to Konoha, where he would meet Inoichi's family. Will they like me? He wondered nervously. Inoichi told me they would, but what if they don't? He took a few breaths to steady himself. Okay, I just have to remember to say hello, and ask them their names and how they're doing, just like he taught me, just like normal people do. It would be easy. He hoped it would be easy. The Ichibi hadn't talked to him for a very long time. This was a good thing. Gaara's past life was very, very hazy at this point. He remembered that he was unwelcome in Suna, that his own father hated him and his siblings feared him. He also remembered that he had done some bad things, too, but he didn't know what. Inoichi said I killed people who didn't deserve it. This time, things will be different. I'll only defend myself. I won't hurt anyone. Unless I have to, and Inoichi will tell me when and who I have to fight. He trusted Inoichi to tell him the right people. Oh, and I should mention, Ino, my daughter I told you about, doesn't know you're coming yet, because this move is a secret. I'm going to warn you, she is a bit loud and bossy. She also talks a lot, and loves her gossip. She got that from me, I'm afraid. Inoichi chuckled fondly. But she means well, and she has a good heart. She'll be nice to you. I'll make sure of it. Just don't let her rope you into any of her silly schemes, especially if she tries to offer you money for it. All right, Gaara said nervously. Loud, bossy, and blonde. She sounded like another girl he once knew in his memories, though he couldn't for his life remember who. You ready? Have everything you need? Inoichi asked. Gaara nodded. He didn't have many things to begin with. He was leaving this place with just his clothes and some basic necessities. Ibiki said that they had packed his other things, like his books and light board for his sand drawings, away in a ceiling scroll. He wouldn't be seeing them during the trip. They'd get to unpack them again, once he arrived in Konoha. He would miss them. Gaara did get one book to carry in his pack, though. The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. That one had been his favorite. The Naruto, and there was one of his best friends, even though he was imaginary. Maybe the other Naruto, the real person who was named after the character, would be like him. In Gaara's head, the Naruto in the book liked Gaara just as much as Gaara liked him, and they were best friends. So maybe the real Naruto would also like him just as much in real life. Maybe. No, shit, shit, Inoichi hissed. Gaara's stomach dropped. Inoichi? What's wrong? Inoichi grabbed Gaara and tossed him at the nearest A&BU guard. Run as fast as you can and don't look back. Gaara opened his mouth to argue. Then he saw the red clouds and black cloaks, and immediately shut up. Chapter 52, From the Ashes. Naruto was ready to get out of here, but the daimyo's court had different ideas. Evidently, if leaving had taken an inordinate amount of time, returning home was even slower, because they had to wait for, and occasionally help in, all the packing. And these rich people had a lot to pack. Suitcases always magically seemed to get smaller at the end of a trip compared to the beginning, and that wasn't even counting all the gifts and souvenirs they'd all managed to pick up. Naruto thought Ino had a lot of clothes, but it was nothing compared to the entire closet of formal kimono and jewelry these people had brought along with them. Their unusual affluence was frankly just mind-boggling to Naruto. Seriously, it was crazy. Who needed all of this stuff? Well, he knew why. In the royal courts you needed to make an impression. In their social sphere, they needed all of this stuff to survive. Just like how ninjas had their weapons, civilians would probably ask them why they had to pack so many kunai or shuriken or exploding tags, in the same way Naruto wondered why these people had so many clothes. That was just how they fought their own little wars, a world in which all wars were fought with words and embroidery. As lame as it was, Naruto wished he lived in that world, but he would never belong in it. For the longest time, Naruto had lasted on 2 sets of clothes, both of which had the same design. Ever since he had become a ninja, he had been able to get more variety in his wardrobe, but all of it had been for completely utilitarian purposes. Like green clothes versus desert camouflage or gray mist stuff, and the set of formal wear that had been given to him for the last mission in Tanyu, which he hadn't touched since. God damn it, Naruto muttered. Kakashi-sensei, as the team leader I demand a story. A good one, too. Not one of those infinite recursive stories that you use to get annoying brats like me to shut up. And you better not read aloud from Ika. Kakashi glared at him over his book. Are you abusing your position of authority, Naruto? Naruto smirked. I learned from the best. Besides, you owe me several stories about my parents. Yeah, that's right. He went there. What type of shinobi would he be if he didn't bring out the emotional manipulation? All right, settle down, my cute little genin. Kakashi-sensei closed his eyes. Once upon a time, there was a technique. This technique was so awesome that it was awesome. Wow. Was it awesome too? And it was also awesome. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. Very descriptive of you. Truly, eloquence fit for the ages. Why thank you, said Kakashi-sensei, once again demonstrating his ability to selectively misread sarcasm as he saw fit. Now, if you want the short explanation, it was a very simple, seal-based, non-chakra-intensive teleportation jutsu, and minus. Shikamaru snorted. Oh, simple. Really? A seal-based teleportation jutsu? You'd be jumping dimensions with that. That would be the long explanation, Kakashi-sensei interrupted. We've got time, sensei, Naruto grinned. And as designated team captain, I say we all want more story time from you. This technique was not an original technique, Kakashi-sensei continued, surprisingly candid in comparison to his usual self. It was originally an invention of the Nidaime Hokage, who intended for it to be used as a mode of faster communication, but it was temperamental, complicated, and ultimately more of a mental exercise than a technique with useful applications in war. As a result, it never caught on very well, and people ended up forgetting about it. Until a man named Minato Namikaze came along, the Yondaime Hokage. Someone that their generation should have grown up under, and yet never got to know. Naruto's breath hitched ever so slightly. They all knew much about the fox, but none of them knew anything about the man who had given it to Naruto. Maybe Shikamaru had his theories, but beyond that they knew nothing, for that was one of the things Ino's father wouldn't gossip with them about no matter how much they asked, and so Naruto desperately wanted to know what Kakashi-sensei might have to say about him. He would have been old enough to remember. Minato-sensei was, how should I put this? Kakashi-sensei trailed off, sounding vaguely sad and nostalgic. He was one of the most brilliant men I ever knew. And he was infinitely kind and patient. If you think I'm hard to deal with now, you should have seen me when I was a child. Impossibly selfish, bad-tempered, and antisocial. I don't think you're selfish or bad-tempered, Ino said, false sweetness dripping from her voice. He ruffled her hair. Despite all of my flawless qualities, he was still definitely a lot nicer to me than I am to you, Ino snorted. In any event, Kakashi-sensei continued. He was the one who made the Nidaime's obscure technique famous, for he managed to perfect it for use in battle. Through many painful practice sessions, and even more equally painful design sessions, he managed to learn how to deal with the disorientation of a dimension jump well enough to use this technique hundreds of times in rapid succession. That use was what finally gave the technique its name today. It is called the Hiraishin no Jutsu, the Flying Thunder God. The same technique that had won the war, and one that made Kakashi-sensei dangerous enough to be allowed back out on the field, even with his damaged eye and inert arms. Kakashi-sensei continued to slip in stories, though he would always stop the second he even got the slightest sense that another living soul had come within hearing distance of them. Naruto listened with fascination, soaking up every drop of information like a dry sponge in a rainstorm. The alternative was watching all these rich people and their poor, overworked attendants figure out how to fold clothing properly. Eventually, the daimyo and his people were finally done, and even longer than that for them to reorganize themselves into something fit for travel on the open road and finally arrive back in Tanyu. Never before had Naruto been so glad to drop a client off and just get out of there. Those people just walked so slowly, taking to the trees again. Now that was something he wouldn't give up for the world. You couldn't get this anywhere else. Konoha was the village hidden in the leaves for a reason, after all. They hadn't seen the Cloud Nines since their meeting. Not that they were meant to rendezvous anywhere, but Team Samui had left surprisingly quickly, even though the Lightning Daimyo was just as slow as all the other nobles. Naruto's clones managed to catch something about a big cat, whatever that meant. There's at least one person in Kumogakure who summons either mountain lions or snow leopards, Kakashi-sensei said. The only other cat they have is Yujito-ni, the Jinchuriki of the two-tailed beast. Or it could have been a random code word. Who knows? Speaking of who knows, where the hell did all these things come from? Shikamaru wondered aloud. The side of the road, normally lined with Konoha's famous trees, had been invaded by a random patch of the ugliest wild sunflowers ever known to man. They must have fallen out of someone's tent bag, Kakashi-sensei answered. Shikamaru furrowed his eyebrows. Normal people don't store sunflower seeds in tent bags, Kakashi-sensei honest-to-goodness giggled. Naruto simply sighed. There was a group of merchants making their way down the road in the opposite direction. Perhaps they would be a better source of news than the isolated land of iron. Ino volunteered to go make first contact with them. Upon returning to the group, she informed them of what she had gleaned from their short conversation. Apparently, the Wind Daimyo was unable to make it to the economic conference because he was ill. Ill, or Naruto formed air quotes with his fingers. Ill? What do you think? Well, you know what they say, Kakashi-sensei said, as they departed the city towards the land of wind. The winds in the desert are always shifting. Actually, the winds everywhere are always shifting, but that's beside the point. That's worrisome. If there's even any truth to this rumor. Shikamaru frowned. What's Sunagakure up to? And didn't the guy have any sons? Where are they? Kakashi-sensei shrugged dismissively. They're young children. 13 and 18. They hardly matter. Here, now. 13 and 18 are not that young, Naruto argued. He was almost 14. That was plenty old enough to be trusted with missions. And the third Hokage had started his tenure when he was in his late teens, early 20s. For shinobi, perhaps, Kakashi-sensei said, but they are not shinobi. These boys trust me. They are children. As for where those boys were now, no matter how many people they asked, the closer they got to Wind Country, no one knew and no one cared. There were rumors that the younger boy was sick with the measles, while the older one had yet to return from a hunting trip. And then, most worrisome of all, the current sitting Wind Daimyo was the brother of the normal one. Royal children didn't last long when uncles gained control. Ask any history textbook. How much you want to bet that the position of Kazekage has finally been filled after a whole year and a half of this bullshit power wrangling? Shikamaru muttered. To become a Kage, one needed the nomination of his or her country's local warlord, in this case, the Wind Daimyo. And given how much that man had isolated his resident hidden village, it must have been child's play for one of his enemies to team up with them. And so, even without ever entering Wind Country, all of them could easily figure out what had gone down. The uncle would get the title, the assassin would get the hat, and as long as they kept doing business together, trade would remain fair, and they would find out whoever the main perpetrator in this affair was once the newest Kazekage was announced to the world. A fool's bet, Kakashi-sensei said. I always said pissing off your resident enclave of trained killers was a bad idea. The question is it safe to continue on with this information-gathering mission? Naruto asked. Our job was to find out what happened to the Wind Daimyo, and though our information is incomplete, we have a good enough idea already. What do you think? Kakashi-sensei asked. Naruto, you're the team leader. Why don't you tell me? Naruto jumped into his explanation immediately. Chances are, if Tsunegakure has really killed him over the whole money issue, then the new Kazekage that backed this operation will be pretty unfriendly to Konoha. And if they've completely shut down the country while they gather up power in the aftermath, like I suspect the V done, then a simple walk-in scan like we did in our first C-rank escorting that merchant won't fly anymore. They would probably try further consolidate their power and show how strong they are by being way more aggressive than usual. And if that is the case, what should we do? Well, normally, I would not simply be satisfied with just a few rumors. I would definitely attempt a more comprehensive report. But really, we as a genin team have already done our end of the mission, which wasn't officially assigned to us in the first place. If Central Command wants a more in-depth analysis of the situation, best to send a specialized ANBU team for infiltration, or something or that nature. And it's not just me being excessively cautious. Given the current atmosphere, us walking in there won't do us any good, and will definitely result in a risk of capture, which will likely only hurt Konoha even more, because we'd be some pretty high-profile prisoners, giving them an edge in hostage negotiations. Kakashi-sensei looked at him, and nodded. That should be a good enough excuse for the Hokage and his advisors. The capture of a Jinchuriki and 2 clan heirs would outweigh any potential benefits of a minor recon. Cool, so we can go home, Naruto said. Shikamaru, Ino, what's wrong? Ino had fallen to her knees, clutching her head with her hands. My father, he's Fire Country. Gaara, Inoichi yelled at the retreating group of ANBU. If for any reason those two catch up to you, you have my explicit permission to kill them. But I'm not supposed to hurt people. These people are trying to hurt us, so you're allowed to hurt them back. Inoichi said quickly, doing his best to hide the fact that he was absolutely terrified from Gaara. Terrified, as in, no, this couldn't be happening. No, we're barely a few hours away from home, damn it. Why? The smaller one of the two stepped forward. Haiden, the wanted cult murderer from Jiraiya's files. He looked strangely young, considering the number of years he'd been active. The other Kakuzu was even older, a holdout from the days of the first Hokage. The extent of both of their abilities were relatively unknown. Fuck. Of all the ones we had to get, it was these two. Now, that wasn't very nice, Haiden smirked. We only came to say hello, and you order your friends to kill us? I never knew Konoha-nin were so impolite. His red scythe flashed in the air. Well, if you're so certain. He barely dodged the massive scythe that the first one had swung at him. In his mind, he was frantically shouting as far as his mental range could go, to any and every Konoha team or outpost in the area that could listen. ANBU Team Jinchuriki 1 to Central Command. Request for immediate backup, 2 hostiles, suspected Akatsuki affiliation. Fuck that, definitely Akatsuki. We need help. Now, Inoichi! He heard Gaara yell. Instinctively, he stepped in between the pair of goons and his new charge. He'd spent too much time with the boy, only to let him fall into the hands of the Akatsuki. If Gaara died or was otherwise captured here, all they had worked for up until this point would be for nothing. They would not be getting what they wanted today, not if he had anything to say about it. Secret art, mind-body disturbance, whispered Inoichi. A hard crack of shattering porcelain and tearing threads ripped through the air as Haiden's oversized weapon embedded itself into Kakuzu's chest, sending sparks and plumes of smoke everywhere. Stunned, Haiden desperately tried to yank the curved blade free, but Inoichi took advantage of their shock to control Haiden into slashing at his partner in crime a second time. Kakuzu's neck opened up straight to the bone, and he remained standing. What the fuck? Kakuzu's shredded cloak fluttered to the ground around him, and what Inoichi saw made him want to throw up. Four grotesque, white faces were protruding from his back, one of them cracked and destroyed due to his manipulation of Haiden's nerves. And the man was covered from head to toe in stitches, like a rag doll but even more hideous. Kakuzu's threads opened up and unraveled, and then, his partly severed head began sewing itself back together. They don't call us the fucking zombie combo for nothing, Haiden smirked. Shut the hell up, would you? Kakuzu growled, and then the remaining three faces fucking burst from his body, dragging their emaciated black, ribbon-like bodies with them. Within seconds, the tables had turned on Inoichi, and now he was being forced on the defensive. Just who the heck were these guys? Inoichi cursed under his breath as he was forced to release his technique to dodge the column of fire that was bearing down upon him. His flak jacket took the brunt of the damage from the barrage of wind that followed, but he still sustained a good amount of scratches and bruises. He tried to hit Kakuzu with his mind-body disturbance, to attack Haiden with, but it did him little good, for the strange white faces were not connected to his nerves. They would have to destroy all of those flying things somehow, to even have a chance of getting at the real guy. If that's what it takes, then I'll do what I must. Inoichi stood up, wiped the blood off his cheek, and drew a kunai. Whatever that drawing on the ground was meant to do, Inoichi knew that letting Haiden finish it up could only mean bad news for him. Naturally, his reaction to that was to disrupt his miniature art session. Quite funnily enough, mind control and muscle paralysis did some nasty things to one's artistic ability. The amount of swearing resulting from that one move told Inoichi he was on the right track, but his cheek wouldn't stop bleeding, and Inoichi could only maintain his mind-body disruption for so long. He could feel his chakra draining. The ANBU team that remained with him, chosen specifically for their Fuinjutsu and combat ability in the event that Gaara for some reason broke during transit, couldn't seem to make a dent in him. Any wound they gave him, save for dismemberment, only served to excite him more, and not in the regular way people were normally excited. "Aw yes, that feels good. Now that's what I call a massage worthy of Jashin-sama." There was definitely something wrong with him. "You know, I might just let you live a little longer for that. It'll be more painful, but hey, that's a good thing, right?" Suddenly, Inoichi saw it. An opening. The mind-body disruption had messed up his nerves enough for him to leave his neck exposed. If they could chop off his head, and prevented him from reattaching it, then they could win this. Konoha Border Patrol. They were out doing a crappy C-rank for payday. Boring. But today Sasuke was too tired for a real mission, and payday had to come from somewhere, when Hinata suddenly stopped and gasped. "One of our teams is being attacked." "By what?" S-rank Nin. "We're the closest team available. The next closest team is also in this area, but they're another half an hour away." She deactivated her Byakugan. "Asuma-sensei, do you think we can take them?" Of course they fucking couldn't. Asuma-sensei had just been given his final medical clearance from the last time he fought Kisame Hashigaki, and the royal fucking asked what. Sasuke frowned and straightened his Hittite. "Even if we can't, it's our duty to slow them down while more reinforcements arrive. They're Akatsuki though." No doubt. Ino's father was among the people being attacked. "Then there isn't any time to lose. Sasuke, they were wearing the same cloaks your brother was wearing when he invaded during the Chunin exams." "My brother," Sasuke growled, "can go fuck himself up the arse with an untrimmed rose bush." "All right," Hinata said. "Just making sure you won't do something stupid like, I don't know, run off and try to take him yourself if we do run into him." "If we do run into him, I have 3 grenades worth of tear gas in my left pocket, and 5 flashbangs in my right." "Ever since Sakura screwed over your emo cousin with that trick," Choji coughed something that sounded suspiciously like pot and kettle. "Shut up, Choji. I'm not taking any chances. Those don't look like the standard issue bombs," Asuma frowned. "Of course they aren't. I stole them from Jiraiya, who confiscated them from Naruto. Which automatically means they're 10 times worse and probably laced with extra strength itching powder and concentrated sriracha for good measure." Even as they laughed, however, Sasuke's hands were shaking uncontrollably. In the shadows of the burning forest, he could make out a few odd, flat, white discs with limbs attached. As one of them turned to face him, he saw a vague face-like shape etched onto it. The painted mouth opened. Blades of wind poured out of it in torrents, ripping axe-sized scars into the rocks and wood. "What in the name of the Rakuto's shriveled ball sack is that goddamn thing?" He never got to finish his sentence. There was a faint whoosh of air, and Sasuke dropped to the ground, his clipped black hairs flying all over the place. Good thing it was spiked up a lot higher than his neck, otherwise his smile would be several branches before them splintered like bullet-riddled windows. Hinata tackled him to the ground, just in time to dodge the windmill of wood chips flying through the air. Another gust of air. Choji and Hinata landed on the ground beside him. Sasuke tasted the smell of burning iron, blood, but not his own. There was something wrong. Cooking meat. Definitely cooking meat. No, charring meat. There was something wrong. It was not the meaty smell of Choji's mother's barbecue, nowhere near as pleasant. There was something wrong. Choji's mother's roast pork smelled wonderful and inviting, spicy and savory in all the right ways. This was meat, definitely meat, but it was acrid, moist, earthy, like burning rubber. No, not rubber, it was thinner, sharper, leaner, angrier, more painful, the smell of suffering. There was something wrong. Fuck! He screamed. Fuck! Hinata! Choji grabbed as much dirt as he could in his enormous hands and dumped it on top of the flames shooting up from Hinata's jacket. The thing was meant to be mostly fireproof, but the fire coming from the mask things had been too hot, and it had melted straight through the fabric into her back. Medic down! Medic down! Sasuke yelled, over the sound of Hinata's screams. Even as her face turned red and her throat went hoarse and her skin charred and her own body stole away her reserves of healing chakra, however, she continued to insist that she was fine. Crap, that'll scar really badly. Scarring doesn't matter, Choji snarled. She needs to live first. And then he ripped a fucking tree straight out of the ground, roots and all. It was at times like this that Sasuke was brutally reminded of why the Akimichi were considered one of the four noble clans alongside the Uchiha and Hyuga. And not just because they were a large family, no pun intended. His true fighting ability rarely manifested itself beyond the gentle nature he normally displayed, but every time it did, to taunt a giant was a dangerous thing. Despite his size, he was fast. Ridiculously so. As in, even the flying masks had a hard time shooting at a target that big. His fist came down, leaving a crater in the earth. Sasuke squinted through the smoke, and could just barely make out the target with his Sharingan. Black cloak, red clouds. It wasn't Itachi though. The figure was too big and bulky for that. And also too slow. At least, compared to Itachi. By himself, he was plenty fast. Enormous, bloody knucks fell upon him time and time again, and yet he kept standing back up. Insane healing factor. This is not good. I'm going on defense, Sasuke said. How he was going to deal with these things, he didn't know yet. His best style of ninjutsu was fire style, and obviously that was going to be useless in front of these things, which were doing all the burning in the first place. Hinata, don't worry about us. Heal yourself first. I'm okay, 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 I swear I'm okay. Yes you are, you'll be fine, hang on. That was a big fat lie, and as the words left his lips both of them knew it. Her skin was clammy, and her face had gone from red to gray. She was going into shock, and Sasuke didn't know any medical ninjutsu. She was the one person on their team who did. He'd have to do it the hard way, physically keep her warm and hope that her mind didn't shut down before her healing finished. Where were all the ANBU? The report was that an ANBU team was in trouble. Where were they? Where were they? Where were they? They were somewhere else. There was a second guy, and they were busy spending all of their sealing resources just trying to keep him contained. There weren't many left. Presumably, the rest had been killed by the flying masks before their team had interfered. Well, wasn't that reassuring? Stay with me, Hinata, you can do it, he whispered, because that was the only thing he could do. Chapter 53. Slash and burn deforestation. Fire country. Inoichi's in trouble, Gaara argued. Why aren't we helping him? The rest of my team is there, said the one ANBU left to drag him along. The mission was to move you to Konoha, and I'm the fastest runner as well as the weakest fighter. Gaara bit back tears. If any of them got hurt, it would be all his fault. They were doing it to protect him. Inoichi was in danger for his sake. Having his life threatened was nothing new. The gods knew Gaara had fended off one too many assassination attempts in his childhood, but the idea of having someone defend him while his life was being threatened was new to him. As far as he was concerned, he had always been on his own, just himself and his sand. Baki wouldn't have done this for me, he thought morosely. Baki gave me away. Inoichi could have just told them to take me and leave him alone, but he didn't. Why does Inoichi have to be the one to get hurt, when he was the one doing the nice things for me? Will Inoichi be okay? Ever since the demon in his head stopped talking, Inoichi was one of his few friends, one of the few people who would still talk to him and treat him like something other than a monster to either fear or kill. Him, and Ibiki, and a few others, but Inoichi was the first and his favorite. All of a sudden, the tree branch in front of him cracked open in a flare of fire. Both of them were flung outwards, in opposite directions. His eardrums collapsed under the enormous pressure caused by the sudden heated air. Instinctively, the dirt and sand coiled up around him in a protective shell, but the shell burst in a shower of soil and stone when a sharp gust of wind joined the fireball. Above them, what seemed to be ghostly masks were floating around, smoke and flame pouring from their open mouths. Another explosion rocked the tree they were standing on, blasting them off their feet and sending them flying to the ground. Gaara landed hard on his shoulder and rolled 3 times before he skidded to a stop against a tree trunk. He could barely move. There were so many plants in fire country, roots and giant trees and vines everywhere, tripping him and bursting into flame whenever one of the flying ghost masks hit it. Thick water was in his eyes. It tasted salty. He hoped they were just tears. The whole forest around them was lighting up. Gaara tried to beat it down with his sand, but it wasn't good enough. They'd all cook alive at this rate, if the smoke didn't suffocate them first. All those beautiful trees, going up in smoke. Gaara knew they'd grow back, but it hurt to watch them die all the same. He had come from a land where even the tiniest bit of green was cherished, and to see them go to brown and black so quickly. This forest was generations in the making and now it was burning to the ground before his eyes. How long did it take for this place to grow, and how quickly was it destroyed? All that hard work gone. His ANBU guard had disappeared. There was nowhere to hide, and nowhere to run, not that he could possibly leave while Inoichi was still out there somewhere. Gaara gathered up his sand and ran back. The road from Suna. They hadn't wasted any time. Sunagakure would always be there, but this particular attack was not one they could leave alone. Inoichi Yamanaka was transporting a prisoner of very high priority, as in, the same type of priority that lived under the seal on Naruto's stomach, and if they failed in that mission the consequences would be severe. He technically wasn't supposed to have access to any of this information, but thanks to a childhood well spent poking his nose into places that were frankly none of his business, the Sandaime had given up on keeping him out of classified intel a long time ago. He was a ninja, after all, and any lock he could pick was fair game. Ino had told him that she didn't think he was bad-tempered or selfish. Trouble was, the part about him being bad-tempered and selfish was also false. He hadn't changed his nature since he was small. Just his values, just his ability to pretend. Whatever selfless acts he performed all had a basis in selfishness. Naruto. Shikamaru. Ino. Truly, you've become brave young men and women in your own right. They were so strong, so intelligent. Gods, please don't take them from me. Please don't, just don't. Not for my sake. I know I deserve whatever bad luck I get thrown at me but for theirs. Please, gods, anyone but them. Anyone but them. Half of him was torn and going full hypocrite and taking his kids home instead of helping Ino's father, because Naruto, too, carried a bijou, and they'd be putting themselves in double jeopardy if both of Konoha's Jinchuriki were in the same place. The other half of him knew that if Ino's father got hurt because he forced them to turn their backs and do nothing, his team would never forgive him, and he would never forgive himself. Besides, Naruto was team leader, and when he made the order to divert from their current mission to assist another Konoha team, Ino and Shikamaru hadn't hesitated in agreeing. If he attempted to override that order now, there would definitely be mutiny. Fine, Bakashi. If you're not going to go help, then I will. Obito's ghost suddenly had blonde hair and blue eyes, and instead of a boulder it was an empty husk of a corpse with the tailed beast forcibly extracted from it, and so many ghosts were floating by him, whispering accusingly in his ear, "This wouldn't have happened if you had just gone in the first place, and you really haven't changed, Bakashi, not one bit, still as cold-hearted as ever I see." "Fine, I'll do it, I'll go," Kakashi snapped at the floating ghosts. "Just shut up already, minus." Then one of them opened its mouth and spat fire at him. "Fuck, never mind, those weren't ghosts. Those things were real. And they were getting closer, and shit, fuck, damn it, in a tissue box." "Hey, what happened in ANBU stayed in ANBU, Kakashi-sensei," Naruto whispered. "If you wouldn't mind, please watch our backs." As he watched them zip through the forest straight towards the danger, he thought that perhaps they would be okay. "Of course I will," he replied automatically, unfurling his scroll of Horatian seals. "It's what I've always done." Fire country. All the clones Naruto had sent out to look for Ino's father kept popping, and none of the memories they gave back to him made any sense. They kept getting killed by trees? Nothing else was visible. The smoke was too thick and the fire too strong. Meanwhile, Kakashi-sensei had disappeared, and none of them knew where he was. Not that he would have been helpful even if he was here. For the past several months, Ino's father kept having to go on missions outside Konoha, the very mission he was supposed to come home from today, and so he missed the first round of General Horation tag handouts that had happened during their post-wave training break. Naruto looked around for Hinata, wanting to ask her about Ino's father, hoping that she knew more than Team 7 did, only to immediately dismiss that question when he saw the state she was in. There was an enormous hole all over the back of her coat, and Naruto could see faint smudges of black and purple in her red blistering back. "We last saw Ino's father about few kilometers that way," Choji said. "There were 2 guys, but when they heard us coming they split up. If we even want a chance of getting at the other guy, we'll have to beat this one first." Naruto wanted to say something. To let them know that allies were here. That they would help. Sasuke had the look of someone who had watched too many people die, and Choji had the look of someone who was done with people dying. "What are you going to do, pelt mud and sticks?" Sasuke asked his clones dubiously, though it was clear he was joking, doing his best to make light of a decidedly not funny situation. Naruto shrugged. "If enough of them do it, sooner or later something's going to get clogged. We have more bodies than you have kunai, so welcome to Konoha, bitches, and all that crap." Sasuke barked out a chuckle. "Can't believe you remember that one. That was from way back in the academy. Weren't you ditching for most of those days?" "Yeah, well, Ino and Shikamaru didn't, so same difference really minus." But he was interrupted when a whoosh of air passed over his head. A flash of heat. Without even having to stop and think, he dropped flat to the ground and covered his face and ears with his hands. Rubble and splinters pierced his cheek. A fireball collided against Shikamaru's shoddily erected earth wall, and the temperature of the stone immediately spiked up to burning. His lungs and throat were sandpaper. He crawled across the dirt, half blinded by smoke. His jacket ripped open, leaving the mesh armor underneath to cut bloody crisscrosses into his side. All of them were gasping for their lives. Fingers. Naruto's fingers came together, flying through the hand seals, trained by heart to my muscle memory. His hair flared outwards in a mess of fiery spikes. They struck the water mask, hitting it in the holes where its eyes, nose, and mouth were supposed to be. He hadn't expected it to work as well as it did, because those things clearly didn't have to see or breathe in the same way humans did. But he saw the mask cough and choke, and he figured he wouldn't complain about anything as long as it worked. Naruto had bought them some time, the extra few milliseconds they needed. Flip. Like clockwork, or perhaps perfect teamwork, a giant glob of dirt shot out from underneath Shikamaru's feet, and hit the still wobbling water mask right in the mouth. Slap. It pivoted around its neck, a full 360 in midair. The attack went wide, causing loads of water, streaked with bits of mud, to spray everywhere, but there was no force behind it. Without any concentration, it had barely the effect of a garden sprinkler. The mask and its attached body slammed into the ground, and hacked up a bit, wet, black hairball of grime. "Naruto!" Shikamaru yelled over their mental connection. "Move exactly 6 meters to his left." The glob of phlegm dropped to the ground, bounced a few times, and rolled down the hills, out of sight, where it met its end in a messy splatter soon after. When it managed to steady itself, it was staring straight at Shikamaru, positively infuriated. Naruto's stomach dropped when his brain noticed the position his teammate was in. Shikamaru was prepared to jump away from the first blast from the water mask, but not the next one, which took out at least 3 trees. The one after that almost hit him. He barely managed to jump out of the way in time, and it sent him sprawling to the ground. The 4th one would have definitely killed him. Luckily, at that moment, Naruto had finished moving 6 meters to his left, and the fire mask, too busy chasing him, got in the way instead. It sputtered, doused, opened its mouth in rage, but too late. An enormous meaty fist wrapped around it first. Face purple, eyes red, Choji's fingers tightened and squeezed, and the fire mask, still too soaked to fight back, screamed, kept on screaming, loud enough to revive a frog with a punctured lung. Then the wind mask swooped in. Pressurized air sprayed from it like a steel cutter's jet saw, the force so concentrated that thick deep gashes opened up in Choji's palms. Both Choji and the fire mask in his headlock were knocked off balance, and slammed into the ground right by his feet. Big mistake on Kakuzu's part. One of Naruto's clones was there, waiting. He slapped one of Shikamaru's amplifier seals on top of a bundle of his customized explosive tags and shoved the entire bomb elbow deep into the mask's mouth. As it choked, Ino yanked the elastic detonator string back as hard as she could and let the ring snap back upon its chipped painted nose. It exploded in a million shards of porcelain and pepper-powdered fireworks, cutting through the air with edges as sharp as glass. The resulting recoil from the blowout cracked the other 2 masks and demolished at least 3 more trees. Threads flew everywhere. Bits of leathery flesh clung to the unraveled knots. A living voodoo doll, wrapping around all of their ankles. Asuma-sensei was lifted off the ground by the neck and sent flying like he was a rag doll. Naruto shouted, and about a dozen hastily summoned clones popped into existence, cushioning Asuma-sensei's landing with their pile of bodies. As the dust cleared, he could see the shadowy outline of an enormous man, all muscle and sinew and stitches. It was a giant walking voodoo doll, straight out of a science fiction horror. His voice was deep, menacing, all dissonant chords and infrasound. "I will rip you open," Kakuzu growled. "I will snap your ribs off, piece by piece, and drag your heart from your chest so hard your lungs will become your wings. And I will make you watch as I do the same to each and every one of your little friends, too." A cruel smirk opened up his face from ear to ear like a kirigakure necktie. He grabbed Choji's swinging tree trunk by the branches and ripped it in half lengthwise. "The fuck?" Sasuke breathed. Naruto wholeheartedly agreed with that sentiment. But if Kakuzu had been expecting fear from them, he would be in a world of disappointment. Naruto could only roll his eyes in disgust. Of all the people his threads were currently making physical contact with, one of them was a Nara. Dumbass. Shikamaru's shadow immediately snaked outwards, following the trail down to its source. Within less than a second he had control. Palms slammed into the ground, and a pit of rock spikes opened up before Kakuzu. His body, still under the control of the shadow bind, flopped forward. His chest alone was pierced in 14 different places. Drip, drip, n, drip. Unintelligible moans, punctured with howls of agony, tore through the air. While Shikamaru had turned the human voodoo threads wrapped around him into shadow conduits, Ino had turned hers into live wires, delivering shock upon shock of electricity straight to his muscles. As each twitch impaled Kakuzu deeper on the earth pikes, Choji shouldered the tree trunk that he'd ripped in half earlier and started beating him with it. Sasuke was tossing a pink grenade up and down in the air. The pink ones were for academy pranks, Naruto told him. "Okay, they're filled with glue and glitter. To a guy with gaping stab wounds, it's corrosive flesh adhesive and artery-sized shrapnel." Naruto stared at Sasuke, then at Kakuzu, then at Sasuke, then at Hinata, then back to Kakuzu. He shrugged and stepped back. "Do whatever you want." As Sasuke rolled the bombs into the pit, Naruto's eyes met Kakuzu's for one last time. They were pupilless with a pretty green color, the same as Ino's, but they did not shine with her love and life and laughter. They were fringed in red, cold and robotic and devoid of any trace of empathy. "Kids like you," he coughed, piercing Naruto with a glare of absolute hatred, "should go burn in hell." Naruto scanned the clearing skeptically. The fires still raged around them. "The fires," Kakuzu said. "Hell?" "Hell," Naruto laughed, harder than he'd ever laughed before. "If you're talking about the hell that you brought upon yourself, I think we're already here." 2 masks left. To her relief, Ino saw the wind mask disappear back into Kakuzu's chest. Of course, this extra life he'd taken into himself wasn't helping his situation at all. He was still stuck in the pit, and all he was doing was making himself die more slowly. 1 mask left. She prepared to stab Kakuzu one last time, to finish off the water mask once and for all, but Naruto stopped her. "There's still fires everywhere. If we let the water mask chase around some of my clones, we can put them out faster, and find your father more easily." Ino nodded, but inside her head, even though it had only been maybe a few minutes since they had arrived, she was thinking, not good enough. We're still too slow. Her father's team had moved outside her mental contact range about 10 minutes ago. Was she being selfish? Maybe. She glared down at what remained of Kakuzu. Why couldn't they just die already? Her father was so close, and yet so far, just a few meters away in a separate clearing in the forest, and yet she couldn't leave to go find him because she was tied down here, fighting ugly, weird, ninjutsu parodies of the no-face ghost from that one movie. It terrified her, how callously she was thinking about this man. Could they even call him a proper man? He shouldn't even be alive. And how easy was it, to dismiss his life as an abomination of nature, to dehumanize him until she could convince herself, all too easily, that it was okay to kill him and that his life didn't matter and that they should just do it and end him already now right away 5 minutes ago. But after she had that thought, she remembered all those times her father had helped teach her jutsu, and carried her on his shoulders, and bought her clothes and toys and treats and paint for her room, and she, to hell with her abstract morals. Her father mattered more, and she wasn't about to waste her time getting hung up over some bastard who was no better than she was. These men were trying to kill them, after all. In scuffles of this nature there were bound to be casualties. They hardly mattered in the grand scheme of things. She was only looking out for her friends here. Was it really a crime to want to survive? From the monsters in Wave Country, to these guys here, just how many of these attacks were related? Were they all a result of the same thing? Apart from their team, of course, they seemed to be the greatest common denominator in every single incident. So many enemies, like in the comics, good guys against the bad guys, but the bad guys were everywhere, and what does it say about you, the supposed good guy of your own life, when everyone you see is a bad guy, when everyone is your enemy, making you everyone's enemy in turn? She narrowed her eyes. Live or die, she thought, it's all the same. They were all shinobi here. Kakuzu knew what he was getting into when became a shinobi, when he decided to go rogue. She wasn't going to waste any more of her energy trying to empathize with him. She only wanted her father back. All she could hope for at this point was for one of Naruto's clones to run into something. Or, where's Kakashi-sensei? Almost as soon as she asked that question, her mind suddenly overloaded with random blurry pictures, white trees against black smoke. Her head spun as his rapidly flickering field of vision skittered through her mind. The world flipped around, back and forth, up and down. She was watching a badly done 3D movie, with the colors inverted. She was standing on a badly tied tightrope, swaying on unstable ground, flying through the air like a cork floating aimlessly on the sea, not knowing if she was ever going to land. Nauseated, she quickly pulled back and braced her hands on her knees. That is, she chastised herself, the last time I ever tried to maintain a mental connection with someone high on the Hiraishin no Jutsu. Ino knew Shikamaru was never so disorganized. Even Naruto, at his core, always knew exactly what he was doing, and who he was. Was this how teleportation felt, the strained dimension jumps took on the mind? Or was this how her teacher always was? Her knees wobbled. She wanted to sink down into the dirt. No, she couldn't. They needed to end this, and quickly. Her father was out there. Somewhere. Ino tried her best to ignore the debris littering the forest floor. Once, she had been so hesitant to kill, and now, it seemed almost too easy, worryingly so. Ino? What's wrong? What's holding up Kakashi-sensei? Shikamaru asked. She shook her head. We're not done. There's another one. Apart from Kakuzu and Haiden, another one apart from, what? Who? Ino pointed, and, as the last of the forest fires receded, they finally saw what was hiding behind the wall of smoke. While we were fighting Kakuzu, he's been keeping all of those things away from us, all on his own. They were everywhere, a veritable army of them, the white trees with yellow faces and the teeth of carnivores. Zetsu. Ino threw her senses out as far as they could go. Where's my father? She begged, hoping to pick up even a little trace of his thoughts. Where is he? She found nothing. Fire Country. Hope blossomed in Inoichi's chest. Allies have arrived. I can feel it. 2 teams. That was 2 teams more than he had expected to respond to his call for help. One of them came from a scheduled patrol. They were maybe 5 minutes away. The other was a team returning home from a mission earlier than expected. If they ran as fast as they could, they would make it in about 10 minutes. He wondered who they were. His brain was too preoccupied to identify anything more concrete than basic distance evaluations. Inoichi, in full control of Haiden's mind, swung the man's scythe at his own neck. Or at least, he tried to. One moment, he could feel the connection, and the next minus. Nothing. Inoichi felt like he was floating for a second, before everything crashed to the ground. He felt dead. No energy left. Have I really been using that much chakra? No way, I timed it. There on his back. He saw a strange patch of white. A yellow smiling face. And he could sense the chakra. Moving. That thing was stealing his. Damn it, Zetsu! Haiden yelled. Stop ruining my goddamn fun! Inoichi turned his head, and came face to face with a strange, tall, plant-like creature. With horror, he realized, Haiden and Kakuzu were not the only Akatsuki members waiting for us today. I wouldn't have to, if you had killed him properly right away. He already tricked you into destroying one of Kakuzu's hearts with his mind technique. Stop bossing me around. You're not my mother. I killed my mother. This guy. This was an S-rank nin. It was ridiculous. He was acting like a child. No, even better, he was acting like one of those old-time, over-the-top villains from all his favorite manga when he was in the academy. Inoichi tasted iron on his lips, and chuckled before he collapsed, ears ringing. His head spun. Nausea, too much of it, he could not balance. A loud bang came from above. Blasting noises everywhere. Inoichi touched his ears, and felt liquid. His eyes stung. He pushed himself to his feet. Except he didn't. He couldn't move. He had no energy. He was starving. The spores were sucking him dry. The dust cleared. Inoichi could see Haiden standing in a completed circumscribed triangle. His face had changed. It was no longer human, but skeletal, all black and white and deathly. Someone destroy that circle, Inoichi begged. Destroy the circle. The remaining A and BU immediately threw themselves at Haiden, one kicking dust over the drawing on the ground, the other two trying to push him down before he could stab himself anymore, but whatever he had thrown at them was not letting them balance properly. And so they wobbled, strangely, too strong to stay down but too weak to finish him off. He saw the white spores blossoming on their backs, too, and they all fell to the ground, first twitching, and then completely still. Inoichi wondered, helplessly, where Gaara was. If Gaara's sand would protect him from the spores. If there was a searing pain in his abdomen. And then Chapter 54. So soars the firefly. He was pretending to be a Nara tonight, for the shadows were his friends. The shadows had been his friend for a very long time now, perhaps his only friend. Itachi wasn't going to be stupid enough to consider anyone in the Akatsuki trustworthy enough for any of that. Yujitomi was a dangerous individual, famous among her peers from Kumogakyo for a reason. The best way they could think of to minimize losses would be through stealth. Now, why the hell Pain had chosen Deidara to go on this mission with them even after knowing that fact was a mystery to Itachi. But if this failed, then he wasn't complaining. As long as he didn't die before his time as a result. The state of his lungs was limited as it was. Chakra could only sustain him for so long. It had kept back the worst of the symptoms for most of his life, while he was growing up and training, but it wouldn't any longer. Every time he coughed, he could feel more and more mucus gathering in his air passageways. Perhaps Pain was sending them on this mission out of sheer impatience. It would certainly explain why they had suddenly changed the plan, trying to pin the disappearance of Akumo-nin on Konoha, rather than the other way around, even though having Kumogakyo be the guilty party in this one made more sense. Badum! What the heck? Kisame hissed. Deidara, Itachi groaned under his breath. Kisame sighed exasperatedly. That idiot. Why had they brought him, again? Oh, right. Because apparently, this mission required 4 people rather than the usual team of 2, on the account that Yujitomi would be better guarded and better trained than the other Jinchuriki, who had been rogue or traveling alone. Also, because some genius had managed to convince Pain that Deidara and Sasori were a better choice than Haiden and Kakuzu. Itachi gave himself an invisible pat on the back. Should we get out of here? Itachi asked drily. There will be trouble if we fail, Kisame said. Pain won't be pleased if we don't return with at least something. Itachi nodded mutely, and signaled for Kisame to follow him in a wide circle around the area where Sasori and Deidara had initially engaged Yujitomi. The initial plan had been for Itachi to distract everyone with a mass area effect genjutsu first, and then use force in the likely case their targets managed to notice and dispel the illusion in time. Naturally, Deidara had decided that plans weren't his thing, and that rushing in and bombing everyone like their land was full of black gold was his preferred mode of operation. That wasn't Itachi's problem. The terrain was rough, and all the smoke made it difficult for even the Sharingan to see through, but from what Itachi could tell, a few explosions hadn't hurt Yujitomi much. If anything, they had only made her even more irritated. Both her hands glowed with bright blue chakra, shaped into claws. One swipe from her could easily disembowel an elephant. True, Deidara was too far away for her to reach, having realized that climbing onto one of his birds and flying far, far away was the smartest thing to do right about now. But that didn't mean he was in any less danger. She spat fire. Deidara might have used explosives, but he was just as immune to their effects as any other man. That is to say, not very. One jet from her killed his giant clay bird and burned off one of his arms. She could not do any more to hurt him, for at that moment, Sasori had killed the last of her comrades and was now turning his puppets on her, but that did little to help Deidara, who was falling hundreds of feet from the sky. There were cracks in the rock radiating from where he had hit the ground. Go help Sasori, Kisame. I'll take care of Deidara, Itachi ordered, watching Yujitomi demolish yet another one of Sasori's puppets. Another mouse-shaped fireball burned through the strings of 5 more, and Sasori, normally silent, cursed loudly. Kisame nodded, and drew Samahata. For good measure, Itachi cast a quick genjutsu, to help out Sasori just a tad, and then snuck his way over to the clump of shrubbery where Deidara had fallen. He was injured, but not dead. The bushes had broken his fall, and he had spat out enough clay at the last second to shield his neck and head from the worst of the damage. Ugh, he groaned, crawling out of the wreckage. Itachi grabbed him by the shoulders and pulled him out of the pile of ash and earth when the sky lit up yet again. He saw Yujitone's stray fireball coming, and jumped out of the way. Deidara, still disoriented from his fall, didn't. His life ended there. A bit depressing, that he had just barely escaped one death, only to walk into another one. As Itachi observed the smoldering pile of smoke that had once been Deidara hiss and deflate, he wondered if he should feel even the slightest bit of guilt for abandoning a fellow Akatsuki member to his death. And then he decided, no. He didn't feel guilty for leaving Deidara to die. It was his own fault. If he had just followed the plan like he was supposed to, he wouldn't have died. Then again, it had been Itachi who had suggested the quietest, most boring plan he could think of, knowing that Deidara would disagree. There was silence coming from the other side of the bushes. The fight was over. Samahata, his illusions, and the puppets combined had taken their toll on Yujitone. Their work was done here. Now Sasori and Kisame were fast approaching. Hastily, Itachi shoved Deidara's chunk of clay underneath some bushes and stepped out to greet them. That looks nasty, Kisame whistled. He nudged Deidara's blackened body with a toe. Maybe we should have brought Haiden and Kakuza here after all. At least they wouldn't have died, Sasori shrugged. I hated him anyway. No matter, Itachi said, producing some pre-made evidence bags. We should clean up. The boss said we have to make it look like Konoha was responsible. Kisame willingly reholstered Samahata and took a bag, while Sasori grimaced, but dragged his puppets along anyway. Throughout the process, Itachi made sure to forget about one of Deidara's lumps of clay. There was a Kumo team nearby, though he couldn't make out more than the apparent leader, a woman with short blonde hair. If she was even a halfway decent jonin, she would find it. Oh, Itachi, you missed this, Kisame said. Damn. Never mind then. Apologies, Itachi mumbled. Hey, Itachi, you sure you're doing okay? It's not like you to make these little mistakes. If Itachi didn't know better, he might have mistaken that for concern in Kisame's voice. How bad has your vision really deteriorated? Be honest, maybe a year before I go fully blind. Wow. How fuzzy is it right now? Kisame waved his hand in front of his face. You think prescriptions would help? Unless you're afraid of looking ridiculous. Given my associates, I think that would help me fit in more, actually. Kisame punched him in the arm. It was as close to brotherly as they would ever get. Fire country. Desperation fogged all of her thoughts. Ino watched as Kakashi-sensei completely tore through the white Setsu creatures like paper. With every kick, another one of their plants died, their earthly bodies burned through, a tree struck by lightning. The clearing was littered with firebombs and chakra wires filled with current. He was flying. Every explosion of electricity would bump him up into the air, and then he would disappear off to another Horatian seal marker, toes never brushing the ground, not even once. And while he could catch them, they could not catch him, no matter what they tried, whether it was growing out their arms and legs in twisted vines or joining their pasty white bodies into giant Venus flytraps. He was untouchable, unstoppable, unbeatable. She was watching a god of thunder and lightning, all bright sparks and light feet. The monsters could regenerate their depleted numbers, split in two to spawn another one of its ilk, but for every white Setsu that was born, Kakashi-sensei would murder 3 with his bare feet, and his wire traps would burn up 5 more. And yet the dark monsters of fear and anxiety clawed at her mind. They ate away at her brain, her self-control, her common sense. The Horatian no jutsu was fast, amazingly fast, ridiculously fast, terrifyingly fast. More of the white Setsu army were dying than being born. Eventually, the white Setsu army would be whittled down to nothing minus, but eventually wasn't good enough. However fast Kakashi-sensei was going, it simply wasn't fast enough. I don't care. I don't care. I just want to find my father. They needed to go find her father. Can you guys take care of the water mask? She asked. Sasuke shot another glance at Hinata. Her stability was improving for now. But of course, Ino realized, he was reluctant to leave her alone. Not because he doubted the skill of Naruto's clones, but because, by principle, teammates didn't leave each other behind. Ino would have clung just as tightly, had it been someone from Team 7, but needs must. Sasuke had been one of the best fighters in the academy, and they needed everything they could get. Naruto nodded. The burnout clearing filled with 50 more of him. Of course we can, But what are you planning to do minus Ushiyu Hitsuji me? The sparks danced around her temples. It was possible, she knew, to transfer lightning chakra across an insulated gap, if the gap was small enough and the electric power was high enough. It was also possible, she knew, to transfer lightning chakra over longer distances through direct contact, be it metal, string, or hair. But transferring lightning chakra over longer distances across an insulated gap without assistance from a conductor had been impossible. Up until now. What the heck? She heard Shikamaru exclaim, and then the entire world was drowned out save for a soft humming in her ears. The Yamanaka mental techniques, and really, any contactless or non-physical techniques, were still also chakra constructs, wireless ones. Simply replacing the yin and yang chakra in the technique with elemental chakra, her lightning transformations, in the right amount. Well, it was a bit like connecting a watermelon to a capacitor. 3, 2, 1. A fluorescent tunnel of glowing electromagnetic waves pulsed before her eyes. Her mind scattered into trillions of tiny charged particles. She was zipping through the air, puncturing through all the remaining white setsuclones. She was a bullet, an electron, a cannon, an atom, ripping them all apart at the structural level. Their cells popped before her face like soap bubbles, all the fibers and tissue shredding, ripping apart. This was just her, and her mind. It was exhilarating, intoxicating, this power, to be able to control, to be able to simply think something and have it happen. She was a Yamanaka, and in their clan, the intent to kill and the act of killing were one and the same. She burned, hotter than 1,000 splendid suns. Zetsu was strong and hardy against solid attacks, but Earth was weak before lightning. They stood no chance. She may not be Kakashi-sensei, able to move her body quickly through physical space, but she could move her energy, and that the woody creatures were powerless against. And then, by pure chance, she hit one of the creatures by its toes, where its roots were. Oh, she thought. Oh ho ho. This is just too good. The White Setsu army, it seemed, also communicated telepathically. Thousands upon thousands of roots all running underneath the ground, each tree clone a node in their distributed information scheme. And, judging by the volume of random information bouncing around, it seemed like they were letting this thing running constantly. The sheer amount of power they required just to keep every single clone connected at once was absolutely massive. It would be their downfall, one network. One bloated, insecure, obscurity-reliant network that all of them were connected and forcibly contributing to. And she had just gained direct access to it. The soft electric hum in her ears doubled, tripled, quadrupled their frequency up to a maddening high-pitched whir, as she overloaded their root structure all the lightning she could muster. Given the capacity of power already naturally straining their system, it didn't take much. Bark cracked angrily. Tree trunks spontaneously combusted. Twigs and leaves shriveled into thin air like they were stepped on by invisible men with bonfires for shoes. All their white, sticky pasty would burst into flame, fueled by their own internal sticky starch that made up most of the white sets of bodies, bright sparks fizzling out as quickly as they came, unable to withstand the force of her added current. The psychic pathways sawed through everything they touched, sharp like a web of garrotes. Within the safe confines of her mind space, Ino let out a mad cackle. She was unstoppable. Before, she was simply destroying the ones in the direct range of her mind transfer, which wasn't very far. The mind transfer was very short range, barely reaching anything that wasn't right in front of her face. But now, she could contact every Zetsu out there, see everything they were seeing, limited only by her own small chakra reserves. They might as well have let Shikamaru loose in their forest in the middle of the night. Night, black, darkness, black. You do not belong here. What? Wham! Suddenly her rocketing speed slammed into a halt. She crashed against a wall of ice. Sharp shards of freezing ink punctured her brain. In mere milliseconds she had plunged from the top of the world into a bottomless pit. She couldn't move. Her brain was stuck in this tar, sticky and dense and too cold and burning. She was swimming in a pool of liquid mercury with gold weights attached to her limbs, and she couldn't see. Snot dripped from her nose. But she didn't dare disrupt her chakra structures, so she resisted the urge to wipe it away. Her tongue darted out. Wait, that wasn't snot. Crap, nosebleed. Her arms shook uncontrollably and her vision oscillated between too dark and too bright. Her face felt wet and too rough, her body shivering with blistering fever. She didn't have much longer before she would start shutting down. Her brain pounded from the sheer exertion it took to keep herself conscious, which only made things worse as she expended more strength to make up for her draining weakness. And there, a wave of nausea, crashing down upon her again, but she could not close the connection, as much as she wanted to. Arrogant little girl. You thought just because you defeated some white Zetsu clones, that you could wander into the realm of black Zetsu, and walk away. The cold fingers of the black shadow coiled around her neck. The noose tightened. No. It is not that easy. Panic descended. Let go of me. Let go of me, let go, let go, let go, let go, Ino screamed. One moment, we were launching the last of our explosives at the final mask of Kakuzu, and the next, Ino had been blown back 50 feet into a tree. Faster than a blink of an eye, Kakashi-sensei's Hiratian rampage died down into nothing, and then he was curled over her, looking simultaneously every bit too old and too young, weary yet vulnerable, feverishly, frantically, pouring what remained of his chakra into her ribcage, trying desperately to restart her heart. Ino, you're going to have to lie down. You completely messed up your own head with that technique, foolish girl. Even from where I stood, I could see the electrical burns zigzagging across her palms and face. Oh gods, Naruto moaned in terror. Ino, you couldn't have known what she was planning, Choji said quickly. You trusted her, and you can't blame yourself. Fuck the blame game. I snarled, irrational fury tearing my brain apart. What the fuck just happened? I snarled. What? The fuck just happened? Does it look like I know? Naruto spat. Whatever technique she used fried all those white sets of things simultaneously. It must have backfired somehow. I shook my head. Just looking at it, I can tell what she did. She took the mind transfer, replaced some of the normal chakra with lightning chakra, and let all the white sets blow themselves up. That should not have been enough to rebound against her. No. Wherever her mind went, she must have run into something else, I said darkly. Fucking hell, though. Way to take down a regiment of cannibalistic plant men. She had decimated their ranks in less than a second. And after all that, she just dropped like a sack of potatoes? Something must have happened minus. Out of the corner of my eyes I saw it. A little oily puddle, dense and pitch dark, and yet smoky and light, attached to the heels of the one white Setsu still standing, just like a shadow, crawling, feeding off all the light and life energy in the area, sucking everything happy into its black hole of a stomach. To this day, I have no idea what possessed me to do such a thing, but I reached out and touched it. Perhaps there was a power in it that I recognized as my own. Both of us were like shadows, in a way, and whatever we touched, we had a burning desire to take over and manipulate. A taste of my own medicine, so to speak, of all the times I had dared to use the shadow possession jutsu on others. As soon as my fingers, and shadow, made contact with this thing, I immediately knew one thing. I had just pulled the most monumentally imbecilic move of my entire life up until this point, and that was saying something, because even though I knew I was smart, I had done some magnificently stupid shit when I got into things way over my head. There would be dumber things later on, but for now, this one took the cake. Again, still have, no idea why I did it. This thing, I suppose the most apt name would be Black Setsu, seeing as it was simply the inverted version of the white Setsu trees. This Black Setsu thing, somehow, affected me more than Ino's mind transfer ever had, affected me more than anyone else in the area, and now I was stuck, trapped like an iron shaving on a magnet. I tried to get it off me. Thump. Thump. Thump 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 thump. Blood pounded in my ears, as fast as a rabbit's heartbeat. Rabbit rabbit rabbit, no such luck. It seemed completely resistant to anything any of us threw at it. Chakra, elemental techniques, weapons, all of them sunk into its great writhing mass. Use your brain, damn you, I scolded myself. There's got to be a way minus. An idea popped into my head. Naruto, give me your chakra now. Please, I need it. Naruto was shaking. Somehow, I could tell he was the real one, not a clone. How do I feed your chakra into the... I gestured at my own shadow with my chin, only to freeze as I saw the glowing blue and orange sputter and die. Naruto glanced up at me, terrified. It's not taking it. I let out a massive breath. Shit, what? I let the bomb drop. Your chakra and my minus shadows must also be, incompatible. Shit, double shit. How could I have been stupid enough to forget? Our elemental natures, wind and earth, were neutral in comparison to each other, but the shadow bind, and all of its derivatives, including my shadow Fuinjutsu, were all in chakra types. Naruto's regular chakra, as well as the Kyuubi chakra, were disproportionately skewed towards yang chakra. For what felt like hours, but was probably only about the span of 5 seconds, I had lost all of my ability to think. No, even worse, I could think, but I could not control myself. I could only watch, a powerless audience member in my own life as my limbs were disconnected from my brain. It crawled over my head minus. It is a fact of life that death exists also, it said, minus, and it wrapped itself around my face. It was also at the very same moment that the fuse on the ball of detonators attached to Kakuzu's water mask, delayed by the natural moisture surrounding its target minus, finished burning up. One moment, the water mask had been readying an attempt at one futile final attack. The next, it had exploded, and the volume of water it was carrying in its cheeks spilled uselessly to the ground, right on top of me. So, picture me, fighting the Akatsuki, standing all glorious in their black cloaks and red clouds. Also picture me, lying on the ground, with this black zetsa thing wrapped around my nose and mouth like a dense cloth or a plastic bag. And also picture me, with water being poured on top of my head over this cloth, which was covering my nose and mouth. Looking back, it all sounds so stupid. So damn stupid. It was just a little bit of water and I was fine, and come on, it wasn't even that bad. It lasted barely a second. Really so stupid. I knew onsen owners with stronger waterfalls than the comparative bucket that had fallen on me, the last choking bits of spittle of a dying mask. Like come on, I thought I had overcome it. I thought it was already behind me. I really did. For fuck's sake, I beat him. I beat Itachi Uchiha at his own game. So why was I losing here? Because my brain, my damaged, traumatized, scarred traitor brain, with its perfect memory even in situations I would have rather forgotten, immediately assumed in a brilliant leap of association. It's nothing personal, Itachi Uchiha smiled down at me. You remind me of myself, actually. The cloth went over my face. The bucket dangled in the air, before everything went so horribly wrong. The storm swirled around him. His mind, a complete haze. Gaara could hardly remember. The only thing he cared about now was Inoichi's orders. Kill them. Kill all the Akatsuki? Gaara already knew too much about death. He would not let this man take away a person who had worked so hard to help him. His sand had shielded him from the worst of it, so he would have to be the one to do it. There was so much dirt here. He was an entire ocean by himself. The sand went everywhere. Gaara didn't even bother to pay attention to his range. He could have flooded the whole forest for all he cared, just as long as the Akatsuki were killed. And then he could rescue Inoichi, and then Inoichi would take him home to Konoha, where he would get to meet Inoichi's daughter and Inoichi's daughter's friend who was also his age and a Jinchuriki like him, and then they could all live happily ever after, and it would be wonderful minus. Gaara stopped. Inoichi was on the ground, arms wrapped around his own gut, mouth still open in a silent smile. Inoichi! It was useless. Inoichi, please. His eyes were already blank. Inoichi, medic. I need a medic, someone, please. Too late for that. No. His body had already been cold for the last 15 minutes. This is all your fault. You can never do anything right. You killed everyone you hated, Gaara, and now you can't keep the people you love alive either. But no matter how much Gaara tried to call him, he would not respond, except for a smoky burble of blood from his mouth. Even in his death, everything that exited that man's lips had come straight from his heart. So this is where your story ends, Inoichi Yamanaka. Death made no bargains. Nor would denial or grief settle the score. Thus it followed that there would only be one option left. So Gaara saw rage. Chapter 55, Guardian of Hell. The red haze slowly receded from her vision. Hinata's back felt rough and tarry, like a ring of tree bark in a drought. It was likely that she would need surgery after this. Her healing had saved her before her nerves could totally be destroyed. Those surface ones, at least, might still grow back. But it had come at a cost. She was running on maybe a quarter of her chakra at best, and couldn't use any more on herself despite the shaky feeling in her knees, because who knew when someone else would need her help? Shakily, she got to her feet, and activated her Byakugan, scanning the scene before her. Naruto, when did Team 7 get here? Was as pale as a ghost. Ino was minus oh no, please don't let her be dead, oh thank goodness she's barely breathing. Shikamaru was on the ground completely gone nuts about something, and they still had no idea where the team that had called for their help were. What's going on? Hinata whispered. The inside of her throat felt like sandpaper. She needed water, but this bitch. The burnt scabs on her back threatened to crack open as she was forcefully yanked upright. Cold metal pressed against her cheek. Oh, now was definitely not a good time. Let her go. Sasuke hissed angrily. Haiden whispered. I think I would rather like seeing you guys in pain. The severed head of an ANBU dropped by her feet. Though they were lucky enough to have been protected from White Setsu, he had not been afforded the same luxury. Hinata squinted more closely at the face, obscured by the animal mask. Behind the eye holes, she saw the faint outlines of pupilless lilac eyes. A Hyuga then? One of her own family, dead, gone forever. He would be honored, and forgotten about right after. If she looked at his bare forehead, no doubt there would be a curse seal there. Or maybe it was a she, you could never tell with the ANBU armor. Anonymous servitude. Lived in a cage, died in one. She wondered if they had ever spoken with each other before now, other than the mandatory formal greeting during the annual clan festivities. Probably not. She'd never been social, limiting her interaction to her father, her sister, Niji, and her personal maids. Hinata clenched her fists. Stay down. Sasuke flinched as he deflected another flying piece of something with his bare hands. It's not, don't do this to me, she gasped. If I do nothing, I'll definitely die. I cannot stand back and let you guys die for me, if I am not willing to do the same for you. Oh, how touching, Haiden sneered. I'll make it nice and slow for you. Just to give you more time to spend your last moments with your team. I'm that nice, see? Hinata didn't hate a lot of things. She didn't like hatred in general, because it was such a terrible and tiring thing to hold in yourself all the time. But she thought she could get on board with hating the man standing right behind her. The man who liked hurting and killing people because it amused him. And they couldn't even get him back because he was a stupid immortal. To have to deal with someone like that was inherently unfair, but then again, the world itself was not a fair place. She had no choice in who her enemies were, as people rarely did, and so she could only make the best of the situation. If she was to fight a so-called immortal, then so be it. She would do it, and she would either walk away from that fight a winner or dead. Everyone has a weakness. Even immortals. She was a woman of science, and she knew there was no such thing as immortality. All men must die, one way or another. That was the first thing she had learned as a healer. Humans, in all their infinite creativity, may skirt around death and even cheat him for a while, but sooner or later the reapers would get their due. Without warning, Hinata slammed her elbow into Haiden's gut. She noticed his grunt of shock and satisfaction. He hadn't expected her, a heavily injured little girl, to react so strongly. Reasonable of him to think so. Despite her activated Byakugan, she could barely see anything but her target. Her vision was tunneling, thanks to her blood and chakra loss. She could only maintain enough to keep him in sight. Her natural blind spot had expanded to 3 times its normal size, and her range, which she had developed to several kilometers normally, was now limited to right in front of her face. But fear was a hell of a drug, and any threat of an imminent and painful death far outweighed a few third-degree burns. And so, even as her entire body creaked in protest, Hinata pulled her arm back and shoved her fist knuckle first into the dirt. Haiden stumbled, first from the sheer force behind the impact of her elbow, and then from his lost footing as the ground crumbled to pieces beneath their feet, taking his partially formed circle with it. For a second, he looked almost stunned, but then he laughed. Damn Hyugas, he muttered. So predictable. What are you gonna do, fight me? Yeah, I am actually, she said, charging him head-on. Just kidding. She was high on adrenaline, not stupid. Before Haiden noticed her feint, she ducked. A cloud of ash, courtesy of Asuma-sensei, flew over her head and hit him right in the face. He blinked, shielding his eyes with his forearms. Then Sasuke flipped over him and kicked the handle of his scythe. The weapon twisted out of his grasp around the fulcrum of his wrist. Haiden reached for it with his other hand. But then Choji punched him and he had to redivert his attention to block the blow. The scythe went skidding harmlessly across the charred forest floor before it came to a stop, trapped in some underbrush. Hinata packed her knuckles with chakra and punched him in the chest. She felt his chakra nodes pop underneath her knuckles. More importantly, however, she also felt the cells surrounding them splitting, as expected from a person with advanced healing abilities. She could use this. His taijutsu might have been hellishly powerful, far better than Hinata's, even though that was what her clan specialized in. But that was not what she specialized in, no matter how much her father wished it. With a manic grin that she didn't know she was capable of, she shoved a glowing green fist of medical chakra at Haiden's chest. This man could not be hurt. But logic stood that he could still heal, otherwise he'd be a mess of dripping parts by now, not very useful for fighting. The trouble was, medicine was a very tricky field. The reason why medic nin were required to have such good chakra control was because treatment in the wrong place was worse than no healing at all. Antidotes administered when no poisons were present could end up acting as poisons themselves. Miracle pills taken not according to prescription could be fatal. Unnecessary operations meant to get rid of problems that did not exist could create problems of their own. And even something as simple as healing, stimulating cell division to patch up an injury, could be deadly if there was no injury to patch up. Hayden staggered back, glaring at her. What the hell? He spat. Hinata grabbed him by his ugly oversized collar, swept his leg out from underneath him, flipped him to the ground, straddled his chest, shoved his face into the dirt, and proceeded to completely wail into him, using hands, knees, teeth, anywhere she could reach. Terror had turned her into an animal. There was nothing gentle about these fists, so unrefined. Hayashi Hyuga would certainly have an aneurysm. Fuck Hayashi Hyuga. Normally, in order to sustain the healing process, the medic nin would have to be actively channeling chakra into the wounded area to keep the cells dividing. But this man was an immortal. He certainly did not need a medic nin to aid him. His cells would continue to divide, at an accelerated rate, long after she had left him alone, which was why Hinata was doing it. And at ridiculous rates, unregulated cell division, out-of-control growth. A nasty cut or broken bone that took normal people months to regenerate could be done within minutes by a skilled medic nin. So a man who could heal himself instantaneously, with medical ninjutsu added on top of that. A cancerous mass that took months to become visible normally could manifest itself in under a minute with this guy. Even if the effects were visually invisible to anyone without a Byakugan, it didn't make them any less dangerous. She estimated his lungs and arteries would clog within a few minutes. His organs would start shutting down soon after. His body would starve itself as it kept siphoning off energy to feed trillions of useless cells. Each tumor that blossomed underneath his skin was like a sweet, sweet flower of justice. Her tirade was cut off when Hayden clocked her around her temples. Hinata flew back and landed on her injured back, hard. Despite what Hinata had done to him, he still had a few good minutes before he was fully incapacitated. A lot could happen in a few minutes, as they had all just experienced, even more so because Hayden had managed to get his side back. Hinata watched as Choji, Asuma, and Sasuke formed a protective triangle around her and prepared for the worst. The worst did come, but not from Hayden. If there was anything that Sasuke could call the most terrifying thing in the world, it would be hearing that ear-splitting scream of despair again. The same one he himself had screamed the night his entire world had been ripped apart, his whole family slaughtered in cold blood, but coming from someone else's throat. Even though the voice was unfamiliar, Sasuke felt his heart tear for whoever it was all the same. The pain he had felt as a child, that sinking pit of darkness that came from losing everything, he wouldn't wish it on anyone, not even the person who he hated the most, though arguably that might have been because Itachi had already brought it all upon himself. More chilling than the memory of suffocating from Orochimaru's killer intent during the Chunin exams, more horrifying than the illusion of his parents' deaths that Itachi had forced upon him, more painful than anything he had ever experienced before. It was hearing this, the universal call of anguish that too many, far too many, people had in common. The shriek of rage came back again, and in the dark, silhouetted against the sky, Sasuke saw a great, pale, floating mass of something flying around, tearing through the forest like a flood but with something dry and harsh and angry instead of water. Then there was more screeching and crumbling and roaring in anger. He smelled a faint tinge of blood and killer intent. Dry dust exploded onto the ground. His eyes watered. His nose closed itself off. There were tiny, sharp little particles flying against his face. Sasuke realized it was sand. Shit. Rogue Jinchuriki, Naruto said, his voice a strange whisper murmur, too quiet to her and yet unbearably loud at the same time. Powerful, but also more likely to cause collateral damage and friendly fire than be helpful. Chances are he's mentally and emotionally compromised for whatever reason. That's the most common cause of even the strongest Bija seals breaking. And if he runs off, he'll only be captured again by someone else down the road. He's coming this way. We have to contain him, now. The way he said it, it was like he was reciting passages from a textbook, or speaking from personal experience. Oh, who was he kidding? The dobe? And textbooks? Naruto was far smarter than most people gave him credit for, but he never was, and never would be, a classical scholar. Choji's face went from battle-high blood red to pasty white in less than a second. I don't suppose Shikamaru or Ino, 30 seconds. They had 30 seconds of victory. In that span of time, they had gone from celebrating finally killing Kakuzu, back to square one when both Ino and Shikamaru were knocked out cold from trying to go up against Setsu, to minor success in fending off Hayden, back to square -1 now that they had a godforsaken rogue Jinchuriki running at their heels. Speaking of Hayden, he seemed to have abandoned them, the Ichibi seeming like a better prize, still under the delusion that he was immortal and protected by his precious Jashin-sama. Sasuke wondered how long he had before he realized just how seriously Hinata had fucked him up. He didn't seem like the brightest sort. Hinata, Naruto begged. She swallowed nervously as she looked between Naruto's two teammates. She seemed to make her decision, as Ino was already being cared for by Kakashi-sensei, and knelt over Shikamaru. I'll do my best here. Go on. Your teacher knows way more about sealing than I do, Asuma-sensei told Naruto nervously. I doubt he'll be able to transmit information to us quickly enough without Ino's mind jutsu. He'll need to be physically present if he plans on being useful against that. He's also the only one here who knows enough about lightning chakra to help Ino, Naruto replied darkly. Fine way of repaying her, considering that if it weren't for her, we'd still be tied down fighting all the white sets of things. Of course, if the One-Tail loses all control, then she might as well die anyway, along with the rest of us, said Sasuke. All of us are capable of fighting white setsu. But only he knows enough to tie down a bijou. And if it goes loose, then it doesn't matter whether they killed those Akatsuki or not. Well, last time, Shikamaru and Ino also, Naruto began. Never mind. This is an executive decision, as the leader of Team 7. And also the only fighting body left on Team 7, but whatever, last time. Yeah. Sasuke chose not to mention it. Now what? We stop it. Duh. And with that, Naruto walked into the waves of sand and disappeared. So, Sasuke watched the golden tanuki grow above the tree line until it dwarfed even Choji. We're fucked then? Yeah, basically, Choji whistled. So, same as usual. On either side of him, a group of his own clones stood guard. They'd be protecting him during this operation. As the designated sealer, it had to be done. Or designated substitute sealer. Well, non-designated substitute, since the first was supposed to be Kakashi-sensei and the next was supposed to be Shikamaru, under normal circumstances. Simply put, it was because he was the only one who could. And also, because by now, Naruto was better equipped to deal with that sort of role, his raw combat power having far outstripped anyone else's. Hopefully Kakashi-sensei wasn't freaking out too badly on the other end. Oh, who was he kidding? Of course he was. For all the independence he had imparted on them during training, Kakashi-sensei was a fiercely overprotective individual when confronted with real-life situations. Naruto didn't get far before he was intercepted. The One-Tail was literally running around 50 meters in front of him, and he couldn't even get to it because this fucking asshole swinging around his giant scythe that was in no way practical was perched in front of his face like a dumb fucking duck. He was not a happy camper, to say the least. Hey, dipshit, Naruto yelled, because he was so fucking done, as in, honestly, who else in the history of Konoha has had all of their B-rank missions, all 3 for 3, turn into A and S ranks right in front of their faces for something that was totally not their fault whatsoever? The hell is that? Are you compensating for something? Evidently, given Hayden's reaction, that was not a polite form of greeting in any country or culture in existence. Naruto took this as a hint to run as fast as he could. Hayden growled and attempted to pursue him, but ran straight into a tripwire set by one of Naruto's clones and face planted in the ground. It would have been comical if things hadn't been going to shit so awfully around them. Right after that, an enormous fist of sand wrapped around him. Hayden screamed and whacked at it indiscriminately with his scythe. But since you couldn't exactly draw blood from a colossus of dried dirt and eroded rock, he had little success. Within seconds, he'd been crushed and shredded simultaneously into hundreds of tiny chunks of flesh, pulverized bits of muscle and other organs. Naruto didn't want to know the identity of dangled from the trees. Through all that, Hayden remained alive. Only this time, he didn't have Kakuzu around to sew him back up. His body only lay there, in multiple pieces. Couldn't even scream or curse, not when his skull, tongue, throat, and lower jawbone were all lying at least 10 meters from each other. Hey, Kyubi, Naruto tried. A little help? The fox smirked. Now? I thought you didn't want my evil tainting your pretentious perfect little angel act. And I thought you didn't want to die, Naruto snapped back. Unless you're afraid of the Ichibi. Why, you little? I would never lose to that sorry stuck-up tanuki in a million years. How dare you suggest such blasphemy? But then it calmed down when it realized that Naruto had just successfully goaded it yet again, and reverted back to stubborn grumbling. Naruto shook his head and smiled to himself. Well, that was easy. Do you even have a plan? The fox asked. He'd make it up as he went along. For a second, Naruto considered attempting to use a variation of the same plan Shikamaru always liked using, mainly, using an enemy's own strength against him, but he immediately dismissed it. The bijou, after all, were chakra constructs, And unlike Orochimaru, they had no physical bodies to burn out or destroy. The blowout would only be toxic enough to kill everyone with incompatible chakra within a 5-kilometer radius. So no, he could not use the Ichibi's chakra against itself. Don't you want to try reasoning with your madman of a sensei? The fox asked. Naruto shot a dubious glance over to Kakashi-sensei, who was still pleading under his breath. It's okay, please, 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 just hold on for, I don't know, 10 minutes. Please just stay stable so I can neutralize all the residual chakra in your system. Fucking hell. I turned my eyes away from you lot for a couple seconds and you pulled this shit, and I didn't ask for you to jump in front of me, you stupid self-sacrificing girl. You didn't need to do that. We would have been fine if you'd been patient enough to give it a few more minutes minus. Something told Naruto he wasn't really talking about Ino anymore. The fact that both Haiden's and Kakuzu's corpses were now mincemeat wasn't making things any better either. Okay, yeah, the fox agreed. I wouldn't let him within 10 meters of any sealing equipment while he's in that state either. Not that he'd be any help against Shikaku. Naruto frowned. Shikaku who? That's his name. What, him? I thought he was Gaara. The fox snorted. No, idiot. The Ichibi. Its name is Shikaku. That made Naruto pause, despite the rogue bijou in front of his face. Oh, what, you didn't think we had names? You thought we were just giant mythical constructs of chakra and damnation? Well, you kind of are, Naruto pointed out. Silence, peasant. So what's your name, then? Naruto asked. The fox was silent for a bit, and Naruto thought he wouldn't answer, but then, he said, Kurama. Kurama. So the fox had a name after all. Interesting. Nice to meet you, Kurama. I'll remember you if I die. How touching. No, you fucking won't die. I'd never live it down if I lost to that bastard. The humor was strangely relieving. It was stupid, it was pointless, but it helped Naruto calm down. Oh. So you do care. Good to know. Shut up, the Kyuubi growled. Listen, maggot. Dealing with you on a few tails is way different from going up against a thing with few ninjutsu built directly into his suite of powers. I can beat him in any regular battle of strength, but you'd be playing into his strengths if you choose few ninjutsu. But a regular battle could possibly kill Gaara. Naruto didn't know much about the kid, but in addition to being important to Konoha, otherwise why would Ino's father be protecting him? He was also a human being. It was a stupid excuse, for shinobi were expected to kill other human beings all the time, but it was an excuse nonetheless. Kurama rolled his eyes at this. Fine. Have it your way. Don't blame me if you fail, Naruto sighed. So much for good luck and a quiet mission. Team 7's communicator down. Their general strategist out cold. Their Jonin sensei losing it. He himself barely keeping them all together. And also having to seal a fucking bijou when he could barely hold a square of chakra paper without turning it into confetti. Someone up there must have hated them a great deal. Naruto couldn't for his life figure out why, but he didn't give a damn why when all that sand was headed his way. Or rather, headed right where the white Setsu clones were. Where Kakashi-sensei, Ino, and Shikamaru all were as well. Naruto sprinted forward and threw himself between them. He felt his own blood on his hands. Everything whited out. The dimension of the dog summons. The first thing Naruto noticed when he opened his eyes was all the grass. The lighting was dim, but not dark. A ball of fur wound around his ankles. Pakin? That's me. Pakin grinned. You're better at this than we thought, kid. At first we all just assumed that Kakashi was spoiling you out of personal bias. But then more and more of us kept disappearing to the human world. Listen, that's really nice, but I'm kind of in a bad situation, Naruto babbled. I have to seal a freaking bijou. Like there's another kid out there, and he's just like me. And Kakashi-sensei is busy saving Ino's life. I mean, I could totally fight that kid, hold him off while Kakashi-sensei finishes whatever he's doing. But I don't know, I don't want to hurt him. I'm just half scared and half freaking out, and fuck, my team is still out there. Pakin held up a paw. Calm down, kid. Time runs differently in our dimension. What is imminent danger in your world is not imminent in ours. He began walking down a worn path into what looked like a very deep canyon. Tell you what. I'll take you to the boss. He'll know what to do. Really? He's real? I kinda thought Kakashi-sensei was just trolling me, again. You spent enough chakra and blood reverse summoning yourself into this place, which most would call impossible. But what do I know, Pakin said. The fact that you managed such a feat under pressure at your age would warrant an audience with the literal top dog himself, I'd say. So, this boss. What's he like? Tough but fair. Pretty normal in personality. A little on the big side, but not unreasonably enormous. Oh, said Naruto, wondering what special ability this dog must have had to command so many other dogs. It's true that we are small, and that our raw power is less than that of the toads or snakes or slugs. But we dogs choose to focus on a different skill, endurance, Packen explained, though that did nothing to clear up the mystery. You see, humans evolved, not as ambush predators, but as persistence hunters. You, my bottomless chakra pit of a friend, should know the concept of pursuing a larger and stronger target until they surrender of exhaustion. Konoha itself thrives on wars of attrition, using its superior population and natural resources to outlast an enemy they would otherwise have trouble outfighting. Yeah, I get that. So what does that have to do with dogs? Dogs are man's best friend, not only because we are naturally social creatures, but also because we are some of the few animals that can keep up with the stamina of a human. It is fitting, then, that instead of utilizing the natural chakra available in Sage Mode, we have a different sort of natural chakra. Despite his height, Packen seemed to be looking down at him. Tell me, Naruto, what is the most persistent force in nature? One that will always be there, waiting for you, in the end? One that will always eventually find you, no matter how powerful you are, no matter how well you hide, no matter how fast you run? Even without having to think, Naruto knew the answer was death. It's not a question you have to answer. The solution is already right in front of you. Hey! Yelled Packen. I brought the kid! Naruto looked up in the direction of Packen's voice and nearly tripped over his own feet when he saw who the dog boss was. Welcome, said the three heads of the Guardian of Hell. We have been waiting for you.